Namaskar, Nileshok, with another session of Dr. No Shorts. This would be Dr. No Shorts session number or part number 10. And we are discussing impressive empirical archaeology evidence for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE from around the world. We started in all different places far away from Dwarka, the west coast of India. And now we come to the west coast of India. Okay, Krishna's Dwarka, empirical evidence, oceanography evidence, archaeology evidence for the year 5525 BCE. From the location of Dwarka itself, which is the west coast of the state of Gujarat in India, and from Sindhu Sagar, which is Arabian Sea. Geographically, again, to position you, Desha Kala Patra, the location, the Desha, the area, the place is this area here. This is Bharatavarsha, Great India. In fact, everything that you are seeing here, like this area beyond this part of now what we call Pakistan, part of India before, then beyond that Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq. If you go further north, that's Uttara Kuru, Uttara Madra, all the way to 40 latitude, Tibet, which was also part of the Indian civilization, Bharatavarsha, now in the very suppressive control of, oppressive and suppressive control of China. And what is not shown is the eastern part of modern day India, which is Brahmadesh. That's why it's called Burma or now Myanmar. That was part of India too, which was partitioned by British. And going further to the east, we have gone all the way to the Champa Kingdom, which is modern day Vietnam. But even before that, the Cambodia, and then Siam or Siam, which is modern day Thailand, Laos. Then if you go further down to Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, all the way to Philippines, okay, that was the influence of the Hindu civilization, Hindutva civilization. Okay, for those people who just became aware of the word Hindutva and who try to distort Hinduism, Hindutva, and all that, with their limited or non-existent knowledge in academia around the world. So for their benefit, okay, Hindutva, Hinduism, Sanatan Vedic Dharma, Indian civilization, no difference. All right, so the location of Lanka, and I'm going to show you a bigger map. Not Lanka. Did I say Lanka? Yeah, say there's too many things in my mind. Okay, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and they all come together. There is a reference to Lanka, but not for today. So the location of Dwarka, Krishna's Dwarka. Now I'll show you a bigger map of Gujarat. So right now, if you go, you will visit a Krishna Mandir in Dwarka. There is a city in Dwarka right now. That's at this tip here, where my cursor is. But that is not the Krishna's Dwarka 7,500 years ago at the time of Mahabharata war. Okay. Again, in the short series, that is a challenge. Like why this happens, if I start covering it, guys, it cannot be done in 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So I might have to do a longer one, or more than that, actually, you have to up your game and start catching up with reading my books, reading my blogs, and watching my additional past 800 plus videos spread out across YouTube. Because if I have covered something in some other place, if possible, I don't want to cover this again. Okay, so it is up to you how you do it. So please be careful when you ask the questions, okay? And then you ask a question and you wonder why I did not bother to answer. I am actually currently answering a number of questions in the YouTube comments with myself, but also with the help of volunteers. That would also go down. I will only take useful, intelligent questions and use them in my other series, Shraddha and Pradnya. But other lazy, tamasic questions, they will not be answered. Because if they have been answered in other episodes, other YouTubes, they will be not answered here. That is the challenge I see. Actually, I love this doing shorts because they are done in 15, 20 minutes. The problem is you cannot cover what you want to cover. And then people just go on a tangent, lazy folks don't want to do their homework. All right. So this one is where today's Krishna's Dwarka is, and we are going to see an expanded map and the context of places like Dholavira or Lothal, or why they were ports. If we go back to, say, 2000 BC, 4,000 years ago in the past, or if we go back to not only 2000 BC, but go further back to additional 1,000 years to 3000 BC, or additional further 1,000 years to 4000 BC, even 5000 BC, and we see evidence of Dholavira and Lothal being a port, we will see why that is so, why they were a port, why they were ports between, say, 5000 BC to 2000 BC. These are approximate time brackets, okay? And why they are not ports today. There is a role of land subsidence, but also the sea rise and sea level regressions. Okay, both are there. So let's get into this. So this is the broad area. The data that I'm going to show you actually comes from the west coast of India, but also going beyond to what we call Iran, Iraq, okay, and the part of the Gulf countries. All right. Let's start here. This is what you're seeing here is essentially a research work that has gone over last 50 plus years, okay? Multiple research papers, possibly 30. I mean, when I did this research going back 10 plus years, possibly 30 to 50 research papers, data from those many papers is somewhat condensed into this one paper with the help of 7 key papers, okay? And even this data can be combined in a very effective fashion, and I'm going to show you one more plot. But notice the word here, again, the x-axis is the axis of time. Now this time it's plotted the other way. So left side is going in antiquity, say 11,000 years ago or 12,000 years ago, coming to our times, 21st century, 2000, you can think of it. Notice the word third flood. And this is referring to what? This is referring to CRE number 3 from Paul Blanchen's work, the West Indies location that we looked at. Okay, this is catastrophic rise event 3. Also, so that's the same time for this third flood. And we are going to take that data and put the data nicely for this CRE3, which is flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE. Just before that, notice the cold snap, it says. And this is essentially referring to what? Essentially referring to the time of something known as Younger Dryas. Okay. Again, all of these time intervals are approximate. Many times you get a sharp, precise data for the starting point, ending point. But keep in mind, when we look at the data from different disciplines of science, these time intervals or the time intervals provided by the data can actually vary. Directionally, they will agree with each other, but they do vary in terms of their limits. And that has to do with the nature of data that you collect. Sometimes the data comes from climatology, other times data comes from the ice cores, other times the data comes from the ocean floors, and so on. Okay, so you have to take this with a Shraddha, but not stop there. Become familiar with how this research works. Okay, improve on your pramanya buddhi, scientific acumen, logical reasoning skills, and try to bring it together. But also there is something else, and this cannot be taught. This can only come with, I would say, a prayer with a japa, tapa, okay, fasting, upavasa, okay, getting a good coach, mentor, guru, tapasya, and one day it's like, just the magic of time. You'll just say, okay, it just starts falling in front of you. Okay, all right. So we are going to take this data and turn that into one effective graph. This was done in this paper that was published some 20 plus years ago. All right, and you can look at the details there. All right, so what is this data? What is this one graph is telling us? Let's look at that on the next page. But this sharp peak that sudden sea level pulse, this is the third flood that you're looking at, is right at the midpoint of 6th millennium BC, which is what, guys? 5525 BC. All right. So where is this happening? Of course, in the Sindhu Sagar, the Arabian Sea. Okay, that's the combined data. And therefore, it applies to Dwarka. Now, notice this is the state of Gujarat. This is Ahmedabad, okay, Gandhinagar. This is Dholavira. This is Lothal. So right now you can see, of course, Dholavira looks like in the middle of water there, but not that water which is connected to the sea. And it's an island, and Lothal is away from the seashore line, okay? But if you go back 4,000 years, they were ports, and we will see why they were ports, okay? Now, let's look at what happened in 5525 BCE. X-axis is the axis of a time. This time the scale is written in such a way. So starting here, where my cursor is, that's our time, 21st century, 2000 CE. We go back 1000, then 0 is the reference to the Gregorian Julian calendar. Then we go back on the other side. So now this is 1000 BC, 2000 BC, 3000 BC, 4000 BC, 5000 BC, 6000 BC, and so on. Remember, we need the midpoint of 5000 BC and 6000 BC. Let's draw a line there. That's our 5525 BCE. And what do we notice? Okay, the sea level there at the starting of that pulse is at minus 20 meters with respect to current mean sea level. Okay, so suddenly at the middle of the 6th millennium BCE, there is a rise, sudden rise pulse of about 15 meters. So that's like a 45, 50 feet. Okay, on the west coast of India, in the Arabian Sea. Now, every place within the Arabian Sea, it would have felt differently. Remember, the land subsidence. But on an average, a 15-meter sudden rise. Okay, that's what is happening in the middle of 6th millennium BC, 5525 BC. That is when seawater gushed into the city of, which was an island, by the way. You should read the descriptions from the ancient Indian narratives for Dwarka. There were bridges to go to Dwarka, and I'll show you the location of Krishna's Dwarka, not today's Dwarka. I'll show you today's Dwarka also, okay? And so water came gushing in, and it flooded and destroyed Krishna's Dwarka, and Arjuna had to rescue the folks from Dwarka and then take them to Indraprastha, Hastinapur, and so on. We will not go into that historical aspect, just stick to 5525 BC. But after Krishna's Dwarka was flooded and destroyed in 5525 BC, just like I showed you at other locations around the world, the rising water did not stop there. It did not say, okay, I've done my job of destroying Krishna's Dwarka and now let's stop. No, it continued to rise. Many places, okay? And yeah, that's where Krishna's Dwarka was, or is, inside the ocean, possibly 10, 20, 30 kilometers inside the ocean, just south of Somnath. There is actually a place where I started this arrow called Mula Dwarka. And if you draw an arrow in the southwest direction and go inside the ocean 20, 30 kilometers, I'm asserting that is where Krishna's Dwarka is or was. Now, today, if you go and visit Krishna Mandir in a Dwarka, that place is right here where I'm showing the cursor. But if you take a road and you start driving from this today's Dwarka and come towards Somnath and then go beyond Somnath, you are going to actually come across two places called one Mula Dwarka. Both are named Mula Dwarka. One somewhere here after Porbandar and another after Somnath. Again, a short 15-minute, 20-minute time capsule does not allow the discussion of what is the significance of Mula Dwarka, why those places would be called Mula Dwarka, why there are multiple places called Mula Dwarka, and on top of it, why we have today's Dwarka different from those two Mula Dwarka, and why I am asserting that Krishna's Dwarka 7,500 years ago was or where it is, that location is now inside the ocean, 10, 20 kilometers in the southwest direction from Somnath, let's say. This cannot be discussed in a short time, but do watch my Krishna's Dwarka on the Sangam talks. Also, there should be some additional talks given by me at my own channel. So do look for it with the keywords. Let's go here. So after 5525 BCE, the sea waters continue to rise. And so I mentioned at 5525 BCE, there was a sudden sea level pulse, sea level rise of about 15 meters. That's about 45 to 50 feet. And then the water level continued to rise. Okay. And it went up additional 8 meters. Okay. Well, over the period of, say, next 200, 300, 500 years, whatever that time period is. Okay. We can only roughly estimate. This is what I'm showing with this arrow. So today's sea level, mean sea level is here, this zero line. But notice in sometime, say around 5000 BC, so like 200, 300, 400, 500 years after, and this can be again an instantaneous process. The way the data is collected and the way the data shows up, it will show that spread. And as I said, you have to understand how the empirical data works, how the testing is done, why it shows variation, why it shows standard error. That's not the subject that can be discussed here. People have to do degrees sometime, okay? But it can be taught. And if there is an interest, let me know in the comments. I would have to create courses and put it on some platform. I don't know, Kajabi, Udemy, or some other platform where you would have to pay for it because it needs to be self-sustained and you can take those courses. I can do it. You let me know, but it's not possible always through this YouTube type of format. Anyways, so there is an additional 8 meters, so total of 23 meters sudden rise in the middle of 6th millennium BC that led to flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, but something else. The water went so much up, and in addition, something else is happening, but I'll come to that in a minute. Then what happened? So water with respect to today's mean sea level on the west coast, if you want to consider, or in the Sindhu Sagar, Arabian Sea, was 3 meters up in the middle of 6th millennium BC. Now then what happened? Water stayed that way for, say, from that 5000 BC to like 2000 BC. Again, these are approximate numbers, just giving you the range. You look at the solid line in a graph here. This is the time when Dholavira, places like Dholavira, there could be many other places. We only know of these two places because they were excavated and some things was found. And now we know that they were active ports, okay, between that 5000 to 2000 BCE. Why they were active ports? We have the answer. Because the water was much higher than it is today. Okay. Now, after the 2000 BCE, now you see the sea level is going down. Now keep that in mind. Therefore, I deliberately showed you the data from the east coast of United States, from the state of Maine. There is a sufficient, actually tremendous evidence of sea subsidence. In this case, actually the land of Gujarat going up with respect to the sea and with respect to the rest of the geography, okay? We will not go into the reasoning why that happened. That's beyond the scope of a day-long lecture, okay? But it's very fascinating. I might do another short or something on this. So there is a land subsidence, but in this case, land is actually coming up. Now, we don't know whether it was only the water level going down. We have a reason to think the water level going down. Why? Because remember, it is happening around the world. So this is not limited to Gujarat. But we do have independent local evidence of land going up in places like Dholavira, places like Lothal, but many places in Gujarat. So it appears that this was possibly a combined effect of land subsidence in the up direction and sea levels going down. And the net effect, okay, now this is average effect that I'm showing, 3 meters. The specific effect at Lothal would be different. Okay, specific effect at Dholavira would be different. But the net outcome was that these two places that at least we know, and there could be many more that we don't know, We can only talk about the places we do know. So Dholavira and Lothal, they were ports. They acted as a very efficient ports. There is a lot of archaeological work that has been done. And the timing for them being active does match with what I'm showing you guys, like 4000 BC, 3000 BC, 2000 BC. And after that, they ceased to be ports. They stopped being ports. And now we know why exactly. The net water sea level or mean sea level is going down beginning, say, about 2000 BCE. And yes, it went through ups and downs, the perturbation and whatnot, finally settling to where it is today. Okay, so we looked at the evidence for sudden sea level rise in 5525 BCE, but sea level not stopping there. It's going further up by additional 8 meters. That's leading to making places like Dholavira, Lothal as effective places for ports, just like we saw the Mayuram on the east coast of India in Tamil Nadu, which became a port, which is not port today. It is 15 meters inside 15 meters inside, 15 kilometers or 15 miles, forgive me, 15 miles inside the land from the ocean, from the seashore. But that time it became a port between, say, 5525 BCE or even slightly before, like we just know the range, 6000 BC to 4000 BC. It stayed that way for next 2000, 3000 years, just like what we see here for Dholavira and Lothal. And then there also the water started regressing. Okay, remember from Mayuram, it went to Sirkazi. From Sirkazi, it went to Nangur, and then Nangur to the current Pumpuhar place. Okay, going backwards, I'm talking the regression, the regressing of the sea level. It's very consistent, one-on-one match with what we saw in Australia, what we saw in place like Vietnam, okay, and now what I'm showing you here in Dwarka or the Sindhu Sagar or Arabian coast. This is how the evidence is scientific, consistent, not only for Dwarka, for around the world. Okay, all right. And so quickly to summarize, these are the different locations, guys. Okay, I will not repeat these names. I'll just show you on this big map. Okay, so you can count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do you think that's sufficient for you? I mean, if you are not convinced after this, then the problem is not with the data. The problem is not with the science. The problem is not with the Mahabharata text. Okay, and you might have heard the story if you have gone to Las Vegas, or you have heard the Las Vegas story, who is Patsy, or don't be a Patsy, If there is no problem, if everyone else, no one seems to be losing, then possibly you are the loser, okay? So don't be that loser. There is a sufficient data. If you don't understand this, possibly this is not for you, okay? Your brain, at least as it stands today, is not meant for consuming the data of this kind, okay? So convince yourself that's the case. Now, that doesn't mean you cannot change yourself. With tapasya, with shraddha, with blessing, with abhyasa, with the yoga, anything is possible. But if you just if you keep yourself in where you are in terms of your ability to comprehend things, and this has become overwhelming for you, then nothing wrong, guys. This is not for you. There are many other methods. You take with a shraddha, or you say, what? This is not the way for my adhyatmic progress. By the way, this is about adhyatmic progress, okay? In case that point is lost on you. And sometime we will talk about it, maybe in some of the shorts, but it will be a while, okay? There's a lot of ground that I need to cover in terms of enormous evidence that is there, multidisciplinary evidence for Mahabharata, for Ramayana, for Rigveda, for Sushruta, for many other things, before I can start taking this knowledge and see, hey, what this has to do with your adhyatmic progress, okay? But we will get there one day. All right, so I think that's all I have. Let's see if I have a summary. Yeah, empirical archaeology and oceanography evidence for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE from around the world. I'll not read all these different locations. I showed it to you on the previous maps. Again, very consistent, precise, accurate, multidisciplinary. Even within just the flooding, we have data from oceanography. we have combined the data from climatology, by the way, when I showed you the West Indies data. We have data from sedimentary geology, sedimentology. Did I miss anything? Land subsidence, okay, geology, that's a geology data, seismology, okay, let me sometime in another shorts pull some seismology data. In fact, you might have heard that Krishna was giving an indication that, hey, this Dwarka, our Dwarka is going to go down, based on what he was giving those kind of indications. Okay. Now, of course, somebody will say, hey, he's a Bhagwan Krishna, so why does he need any indicators? Perfectly fine. And I respect that. In fact, I consider myself Krishna Bhakta, but I don't quite consider myself Krishna Bhakta of that just pure Shraddha. I find the beauty of all that Krishna did, okay? And I find it enhances my appreciation for what he did when I look at through the prism or through the glasses of Shraddha, Pramanya, and Viveka, as opposed to only Shraddha. So when I see the evidence, then actually I say, oh, how fascinating, and what kind of technology they must have had access to. Okay, so we might do a session on seismology, 1 or 2. I will try to sandwich it into one, okay, but we'll see. Okay, so sudden sea level rise of 15 meters at Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BC. That's how it was gone. Sea level continued to rise additional 8 meters. Okay, then they stayed that way for the next 3,000 plus years. That's why Dholavira and Lothal, places like that, were ports. After 2000 BC, they were no longer ports or stopped being ports. And why was that? Because the net sea level rise was going down. Sorry, not sea level rise. The sea level, mean sea level, was going down. Again, oh, somebody said, oh, why? Well, go do research, man. Okay, but it was going down. That remains a fact. Why the Karya Karana Bhav, we don't know. There are many reasons. Land subsidence could be one. Is this a local phenomenon just limited to Dwarka? Well, actually not. We have seen this happening on the east coast of Tamil Nadu with the Pumpuhar and Mayuram being a port, and then eventually the port shifting from the west towards east, towards the today's seashore, from Mayuram to Sirkazi to Nangur to Pumpuhar. Okay, and we have seen the same data, like the water levels going down in other places also, such as the Red River in Vietnam. Okay, the sedimentology data at the mouth of the Red River, or in Australia, okay, the west coast of Australia, but also at the Great Barrier Reef. Extremely consistent, precise data around the world. Okay, sea levels went up and for 8 meters, then they came down, and then no longer the Dholavira and Lothal are ports, like beginning, say, 2000 BC. For last 4,000 years, they are not acting as ports. All right, that's it. So, and you must have seen this session gets longer because to bring it together, I do need to talk about all that data, because somebody just coming in the middle of something and only looking at a certain shot and saying, oh, well, start asking those tiring and boring questions, but okay, this is just one data point. No, it's not a one data point. That's why I add the summary, tremendous data, guys. And all I'm showing you is something very distinct, something easy to communicate. But frankly, I mean, if you start looking at the delta formation along the river mouths around the world, I mean, literally go to Amazon and Mississippi and in Europe and everywhere, and China and so on, God, you're just going to find more and more evidence for 5525 BC. I already know it exists. Okay, I have those papers. At some point, as I said, the value of additional evidence that again corroborates what is already been well established by rich data, the value starts getting low and low. In fact, that will happen to you as you watch this. You said, Nilesh, when are you going to stop on this kind of data? We get it. We get the point. Well, you get the point. Most of you who are watching get the point, but there are others, okay, even pretending to be researchers, not only on the anti-India side, not only on the breaking India side, even on the pro-India side, okay, they don't get it, or they don't want to get it. Why? Driven by something very short-term, very narrow vision, okay? Because they came up with something, they almost put their ego next to that claim, and now the evidence has shown that that's false, that's wrong, and they cannot move away from it. Okay. So, well, that's why I said it's a part of a Adhyatma progress too. Okay. All right. We'll talk more about that. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon in another episode of Dr. No Shorts. Namaskar.